I'm not going to hoot and holler and carry on, but I will say, it's like Terminator and Star Wars, like Halo and Street Fighter. Sometimes the sequel is better than the original. Welcome back to My Roman Empire, and welcome back to Motorsport 101.
You smug bastard. Welcome to episode 519 of Motorsport 101. I'm your friendly neighborhood host, Trey Harrison. Glad you could join us as ever for the most loaded motorsport weekend of the year. Day of classics, as we would say here in the Motorsport 101 expanded universe. It's an absolutely ridiculous weekend of action from... To put it into perspective, and I joked about this on the website this week, it's the first weekend I've ever given out a 1 out of 10 for a Grand Prix and a 10 out of 10 in the same weekend. And MotoGP was somewhere in the middle. Shit's weird like that. What can I say? A whole heap of action to get through, to get to, and to try and make sense of over the next 2 episodes of the show. First of all, the smuggest man in the world, the man who's gone back-to-back and who didn't even pick him to win this race, but he went back-to-back anyway. Mr. Josef Newgarden, number 1 fan, RJ O'Connell, whose favourite drivers went 1, 2, and 5. How's your fantasy team looking, O'Connell?
I'm just standing here on top of Cloud 9, looking down at what all is beneath me and just thinking, I've got it so good right now. No, like, put the fan cap aside. That was genuinely one of the better Indianapolis 500s. I don't know if I put it number 1 just yet among the greatest Indianapolis 500s that I've lived through and watched. But if you're not putting it in your top 5, you're doing a disservice to what is easy front runner for race of the year, at least on 4 wheels.
I think you're very valid. I've watched 7 or 8 of these now as a slightly newer IndyCar fan. I think 2021 is the only one that's in the same ballpark as what we just watched. That was a very, very special race. And Monaco happened too. But joining us to make sense of a little bit of Monaco and most of the Indy 500 is not Cam Buckley. It's his birthday today as we're recording this, funnily enough. And he decided to go out and get some birthday dinner. We'll be back for the MotoGP episode later on this week. But at the 11th hour, a savior came down from the streets of New York to save us. And once again, it is RyanErikKing, everybody. Hello, King. How's it going, big man?
It's going fine. It's going fine. I've been called in the service. Let me open. I'd say this 500 definitely top 20. I put it there. It's in the top 10%. We've done 108 of these. I'm not going to go top 5 out of the gate. Gotta sleep on it, wait on it. And talking about sleeping on it, this week, a insert name here, /Haas team died. And me being the champ car revanchist, someone said my code word and I was activated.
I might have to know what the code word was here.
Salad dressing, we'll go with that.
Yeah. To put things into perspective, here are the things that we're not going to talk about this weekend. We're not going to talk about was a very fun Fuji SuperTech 24 hours race out in Japan. That's a special interest for me and me alone. We're not really talking about the Coke 600 because what was there to discuss other than the rain spoiled Kyle Larson's attempt at the double, but not in the way you might think. Donald Trump's salad dressing ass showed up and ruined everything. And also, Stewart-Haas Racing is going to shut down at the end of the year. And I have to say that if you had Haas F1 team outliving Stewart-Haas Racing, not just like a couple of years ago, but even earlier this year, I wouldn't believe you.
No, it's and it's funny as well, even as a newer NASCAR full-time watcher, only really in the last couple of years or so, Stewart-Haas were big on this whole idea of 2024 being like a rebrand, rebirth kind of year, life after Kevin Harvick's retirement, obviously, as he transitions into being a podcaster. poor guy. But as he transitioned, I saw the marketing emails. It was along the lines of, this is a rebrand. We've seen all the haters. We heard you. We're going to be back swinging next year, and you're dead like 4 months later.
Yeah.
Just startling. I know Stuart Haas has kind of been on life support with a lot of its performances in recent years, as Harvick obviously kind of moved out of his prime as a driver.
Yeah,
but
they moved from being a perennial championship contender to just being a midfield team. But even still, you wouldn't think that they would just pull up and sell shop entirely. And this is even with the fact that Tony Stewart's barely been around his own team because he's been too distracted with other endeavors. And Gene Haas has been barely around his own team because he's been too distracted with other endeavors that I swear it looked like he was going to get out of.
And I'd say, just like Newman Haas Racing, the champ car behemoth, due to some fault of their own, but largely circumstances that they had no control over, the team is now dead.
At the end of this year, man. Yeah, that stinks for a lot of people that are involved in that entire organization, not just like the 4 drivers that are going to be free agents at the end of the year, plus Cole Custer in the Xfinity Series, but there's 300 staff there that are going to be looking for work. Some of them will likely pick up jobs at other teams, but man, that is really, really tough. As tough as the race getting called off due to the weather, just as the man of the hour rolls up to get in the car, and he doesn't even run a lap. Christopher Bell wins a rain-shortened race. Kyle Larson does 0 laps. NASCAR and IndyCar people are still going back and forth about whether they should give out a waiver. They should give out a waiver. They were willing to give Chase Elliott one, and he got suspended for wrecking a driver out of the race last year.
I'll get into my feelings about this whole discussion when we talk about the race and the other discussions surrounding the rookies in the show.
Oh, yeah. 100%. We'll get into that
Absolutely.
as well.
And the less said about Donald Trump, the better.
Also, I forgot to mention, and thanks for Jason in the chat for reminding me from the stats department, this is RJ O'Connell's 400th episode on Motorsport 101. Congratulations, big man.
Oh, no. I've spent too long in one place. Oh, no. This is not good.
Yeah, congratulations. You've now earned a 5% discount on your rent. This is great news for you. It's only fair after all those naughty points you racked up.
Wonderful. I'll only have to go like 90% on OnlyFans this time. I don't have an OnlyFans account. This is just for a comedic bit. So, before we get into Monaco, the Indianapolis 500, I should say, Freudian slip. Monaco happened. There is not enough to cover this an entire episode because finally, it's his year. Charles Leclerc finally won his home race.
Yes.
From lights to flag in pole position. My heart is full. Nothing else of note happened in this race.
No.
Besides the first lap.
Besides the first lap.
Boy, the first lap was eventful.
Lap 1 and lap 78 is the highlight. I do not envy the social media department that had to put together the YouTube highlight reel for that race, because nothing happened outside of the first 2 minutes and the last 2 minutes. That's your montage. I mean, first of all, delighted for Charles. He has long deserved one of these for a long, long time. He was, and you know, it wasn't a fluke or anything along those lines. He was the best man all weekend. He was incredibly quick, was very fast in qualifying. The only person that really stayed with him was Oscar Piastri, of all people, who had a very, very, probably his best F1 weekend to date for Oscar Piastri. Very strong all weekend, but delighted for Charles. Most people know of his story and the hometown hero status that he has around there, and you know, if you don't, it's well worth googling. But it was hard not to feel good for him. And if you haven't heard Alex Jake's beautiful call of the final lap of that race, go out of your way to listen to it. And I've said it many a time. There are a few. I mean, this is a compliment. He's becoming the Peter Drury of F1 commentators, and I mean that in the nicest possible sense.
Alex Jake's just, and I don't want to turn this into like a broad, like David Croft slander segment, but
no,
Alex Jake's called the finish of that better than David Croft did. It's just facts.
Crofty called it the son of a hairdresser, and I'm just
cut
like,
above the rest.
oh, just it's a mild improvement on him saying Norris trumps Verstappen in Miami, so I guess that's a plus. Like, the bar is subterranean, but here we are. Good for him. Red Bull kind of caught out by the amount of bumps at Monaco, and that seems to be a genuine weakness for him. Max Verstappen could only manage 6th on the weekend, which all of a sudden means he's only... Oh no, he's only got a 33-point lead in the championship now. What a shame. Poor guy. But we got to talk a little bit about lap 1, because there was the big one and the medium one. The medium one was the Alpines hitting each other. Ocon going for a optimistic send just before the tunnel and accidentally getting hooked on wheels with his teammate Pierre Gasly. Latest rumours are it looks like Ocon won't be benched for the next round in Canada next weekend, but
it was even up for consideration. Is like
it's
a load of nonsense.
Like, what are we doing here? Like. You'd think Alpine would be doing everything in its power to avoid getting more labels about how chaotic and messy their team is right now.
Too late. There are apparently rumors that Flavio Briatore is going to come back for real this time.
Sake.
Yeah, this is just what a team that is in like a state of constant turmoil, that has had constant staff turnover, that has never met a driver executive that it didn't turn away in haste needs, is the most caustic team principle of the 21st century.
You know what, King? What is it with Alpine / Renault and thinking that the moment shit hits the fan, they've either got to bring back Fernando Alonso or bring back Flavio Briatore?
Now, I'm just saying this. I'm not even going to preface this. The French just love drama. Let's be real.
You're not wrong. Sometimes the simplest answer is the most effective, and I think that the French just love the sound of their own voices and just love the drama, don't they? It's just ridiculous. Like, every time, like, Alpine could take the quiet option, it turns the dial up to 11 and then hits the button. It's ridiculous. Like, we've only just gotten over the Otmar Snafnauer Adam Permain double firing and in the middle of Spa out of nowhere last year, and to add to that, like, it took their casualty list from the 2020 pandemic era onwards up to double digits as it is. And apparently now Bruno Faman absolutely lost his mind after that Monaco clash and forced Ocon to apologize on Twitter.
It was silly for them to race each other like that, but that Bruno Famin even hinted of benching Esteban Ocon for a race because of this would be like sending a man to be beheaded at the guillotine for shoplifting a candy bar.
Now, if you haven't heard, that is essentially the plot of Les Mis.
Right. I was like for a second there, I thought Bruno Faman's middle name was Robespierre after talk about decapitating someone for basically the mildest of law infractions. But no, that was ridiculous, and that was only the second biggest incident on that lap. Number one clearly being Sergio Perez running into Kevin Magnussen and causing a huge wreck up the hill towards the Casino Square on the opening lap. If you haven't seen it already, and I'd be shocked if you're listening to us and you haven't already, about 140 miles an hour up the hill. Magnussen gets half a run on Perez through Saint-Devote. Its front wheel tangles with rear wheel. There's contact in the inside wall, and Perez's car gets shredded. Those barriers on that side of the track are not fun. Got absolutely shredded. Magnussen's out. The Perez's dead car clips Nico Hulkenberg, takes out both Hasses in the end. Huge red flag, nearly 30-minute delay to fix the damage and clear the track. Stewart said no further action, which, given K-Mag is on 10 penalty points right now, and that would have absolutely taken him over the top if he was deemed responsible. Is he a lucky boy, RJ?
I think so. I almost get the sense that, like with Pierre Gasly, and I know this is a crazy, crazy thing to say out loud, but it almost feels like they're shaving penalty points to make sure that a driver can get close But if they can do anything about it, they can't actually get parked for one race, because there's a lot of marketing and promotional materials around the full-time drivers. And if you have to sub them out even for just one race, that takes work. They don't want to do that.
I think you're reading a bit too deep into this. I think it's just simply F1's version of jury nullification, where like the stewards know he did the thing that should get him the points to send him away, but they don't want to be the guy to do it.
It's like,
I also like that somebody has already. I like that somebody's already made the burnout edit and done the double aftertouch takedown.
I saw that. That was absolutely brilliant. I mean, yeah, I think King's probably onto something there. Do you want to be the steward that was responsible for taking K-Mag out of a seat for a race? And let's not forget, K-Mag has gotten all 10 of his penalty points this year. He doesn't start losing points until March 9th, 2025. Now, he's got to go the entire rest of this season without a single driver-related incident that takes 2 penalty points. And most of the time, 2 points is the going rate. So, good luck to him. Me, personally, Perez does move over a little bit, which does not help, but that was a 0% move from K-Mag, in my
also
opinion.
Crazy that they're both back in those spots. I mean, both Haas has got their times thrown out of qualifying. They started at the back. Sergio Perez did not have a good Q1. He's starting at the back. But hey, Sergio Perez might be the favorite to get another contract extension. So that's going to go over well.
It's looking likely. From what I've been told, it could be announced as early as this weekend. It's looking like they're going to tie Perez down for another year. I don't know if that's the right move or not.
I can't wait for the reaction of this one.
I mean, he's coming off a weekend where he was out-qualified by Logan Sargent. I mean, legitimately. Like I said,
they're going to take this. They're going to take this so very well. They're not.
It's going to be a bloodbath. But it's going to be a bloodbath on social media. Yes.
And if you hadn't seen Dre's race review of the Monaco Grand Prix, I mean, this is only scratching the surface of all the most important details that you will not find anywhere else other than Dre's race review. Tell him about it.
Now, I should preface this by saying, I work where I work. And if I did what Dre did for my Monaco race review, I probably would have been fired.
Oh, the luxury of owning your own blog. Isn't it wonderful? Executive privilege, my friend, as you do. But if you want to see a full, thorough recap of that Grand Prix in my usual wonderful style of Dre's race review, feel free to hit up the website, motorsport101.com. Check out the blog section. It's in full detail. You can't miss it. There's also stuff on the Indy 500 and the MotoGP race at Catalonia as well. Don't worry. That's there too. I promise you, they're nowhere near as in-depth as my review of Monaco, but it's still well worth your reading time. I can promise you that.
I mean, it's a good-looking pillow. It looks very high quality.
I agree. I think it's a very good pillow, and thank you to the Photoshop department at motorsport.com's social media team for that one. I didn't have an influence in that one at all. But in the meantime, you can also obviously check out the blog as well. Check out all our content is on the website, of course, motorsport101.com. You can also find us on youtube.com/motorsport101, where all our episodes are now uploaded as well. And if you really like us, you can back us financially on Patreon, patreon.com/motorsport101. $5 gets you early access to all of our content. You can upgrade to the $10 tier to get supporters club access on our Discord server and listen to these episodes live as they're being recorded, as Jason is from the stats department right now. Thanks, Jason. If you want to follow us on social media as well, you can. Motorsport101 Pod on Instagram, Motorsport_101 on Twitter, and you want to follow our personal handles, you can at Dre Harrison 101, at RJ O'Connell, and at RyanErikKing over there as well. C Buckley 917 for Cam. We'll be back on our MotoGP episode a little bit later on this week. Got that all out of the way. Got the Monaco recap out of the way. Let's get into the real reason why you're here. The 108th run-in of the Indianapolis 500, and what a story it was. Right after this.
That is a couple of car links for Josef Newgarden, but here comes Pato O'Ward, about a car length behind.
And when they come off of turn number 4, the white flag will be in the hands of the starter, side by side into one.
They're side by side. Pato O'Ward to the outside. He'll take the race lead. O'Ward around Newgarden into turn 1. back-to-back winners, but not if Pato O'Ward has anything to say about it. He'll go extremely low down that back straightaway. Pato O'Ward snaking around, trying to irritate that air. Newgarden to the outside. Newgarden side by side has taken the lead at the Indianapolis 500-mile race. He's got it out of the short chute. Newgarden by 3 car lengths, leading out of turn 4, Mark James.
Josef Newgarden with a strong run into turn number 3. Pato O'Ward makes a run, but he will not catch it. Josef Newgarden goes back-to-back. He makes the improbable finish into turn number 3. He makes the pass, makes it stick. Josef Newgarden goes back-to-back, wins the 108th running of the Indianapolis 500-mile race. Pato O'Ward.
Now, normally I'd get straight into the action here, but we have to kind of set this one up a little bit because this was not your stereotypical Indy 500. We had to deal with a 4-hour rain delay for this race because there was a huge storm system passing over the state. On the day of the race, this was kind of predicted in weather forecasts. Doug Bowles was up first thing in the morning, telling the media and telling everybody that was in attendance, we're probably going to have to evacuate around lunchtime, around the original planned race start. The rain came, it hit hard. Fans started running around in the concessions fan stands, which was part of the fun. There's a lot of clips of that on social media if you're that way inclined.
The foot race and gasoline alley.
Even with a rain delay, we were going to get some form of racing one way or another. We just chose Gasoline Alley to have it instead, because who doesn't love a good foot race? And, of course, all the men were doing it without their shirts on, because they're real men doing it in the middle of rain.
They're real men. You think we're going to obey the orders to, evacuate the metal and aluminium grandstands in a thunderstorm? Fuck no.
Fuck your personal safety plans. There's only 300,000 of us. They can't get us all, etc.
We're fortified by the cold and the toughness of being a Midwesterner.
An NBC came down to film some of it, and it felt like I was watching Baywatch at a certain point. It was absolutely wild in that sense.
Oh, man. the worst remake of Baywatch imaginable, and one of them had Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Speaking of Johnsons, man, Jimmy Johnson couldn't even stay for the whole thing, which meant we got left with Mike Tirico and Danica Patrick for the back half of the rain delay coverage.
Our favorite Italian-American brother and our favorite, I think aliens are real person in charge of the broadcast. What a time to be alive, indeed.
In the words of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. or maybe Dracula Flo, the worms are back.
We eventually got a new start time of 4:44 Eastern, but with an arrangement with local law enforcement to make sure everybody got home safely, we couldn't race to the 9 p.m. Sunset time for the area. Instead, they had to come to an agreement. 8:15 was as late as they could go, which essentially meant this was an Indy 500 of 200 laps or 3.5 hours, whatever came first.
Now, King, question.
Yeah.
Why couldn't they run this race later? For those of you who may not be up to speed on all of America's super speedways.
Because Indianapolis does not have lights.
Does not have the floodlighting that you would see at Daytona or Charlotte. It's not built for that. That's why the only racing that happens at Indianapolis Motor Speedway at night is with cars that have lights already in them.
Yeah,
and they have to leave before sunset because you don't want 200,000 people all together in one place in the dark.
No. Bad things happen. So yeah, they had an agreement with local law enforcement. 8:15 was the cutoff. So 3.5 hours or 200 laps, whatever came first. Spoiler alert: we did get all 200 laps in the end, despite a handful of cautions. Especially early on, I thought, "Oh, hang on a minute, this might get a bit sketchy at the rate we're going right now." But we did get all the 200 laps in with about 25-30 minutes to spare in the end. So everybody went home happy. Mostly, unless you're maybe a Pato O'Ward fan. We'll get to that in a bit. But this was, King, you talked about it yourself on Twitter because you were covering this. This was one of the most aggressive early 500s I've ever seen. Did you get the same sentiment when you were watching along?
Yeah, because I think it was a combination of everyone realizing once we start moving, and you're not in front of a pack. It doesn't have to be the lead pack. There's going to be a lot of dirty air. Also, too, we don't know how many cautions we're going to get. This race could either hit the time limit or, there might not be a window over Terre Haute.
Yeah, it's because there was also a bit of fear from the weather reports there might be another pocket of rain coming around 8 p.m. So there was a lot of fear that there was a really strong chance we weren't going to get 200 laps in. Remember, you only needed 101 to get an official result, so it was a bit of a scramble. If you can get to the front, you get to the front, basically, by any means necessary, unless you're Tom Blomqvist, who spun out one corner in on the curb and then collected poor Marcus Ericsson, who's had a nightmare fortnight at this Indy 500, and Pietro Fittipaldi. Also, I did write about this on my review as well. The two people that we at the Motorsport Network interviewed for this race going into it was Marcus Ericsson and Pietro Fittipaldi. I've been informed there is apparently, quote, an autosport curse, and now I'm inclined to believe it.
Now, previously, we used to joke there was a motorsport 101 curse. Now that there's suddenly an autosport curse, only one thing's changed since this all happened. Autosport has a new employee.
Are you suggesting that I may have brought this curse with me?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, fair enough. I can't even argue with that.
well, you forgot to mention as well this bad luck stretched to Callum Ilott, who got broadsided by Pietro Fittipaldi at the back of the pack. Why was Callum Ilott at the back of the pack? He was starting in the fifth row. Turns out his weight jacker was stuck all the way over. He had to come into the pits. He only took the green flag from the pits just as everybody else was funneling out. And by the time he pulls out, bam, Fittipaldi broadsides him. Incredibly does not wreck him too. This was just the start of the wildest first half to an Indy 500 I've seen in a hot minute. Because during that caution, Marcus Armstrong loses an engine. Mm-hmm. We get a few laps of racing. Catherine Legge loses an engine. We get a few laps. Yeah, it's a shitter. We get a few laps of racing. Linus Lundqvist, another rookie, crashes out. We get a few more laps of racing, and then Felix Rosenqvist loses his engine, and then you start to wonder, oh boy, things are going bad at Honda at a time where we're worried about Honda's future in this very sport after 2025.
So, this is where I point out that in this year's race, 11 drivers failed to finish. 9 of them were driving Honda-powered cars. Only bright side, only 3 of those retirements were due to mechanical failures.
The problem is, although it isn't really good when you account for 100% of the mechanical attrition rate.
It's not ideal, is it? Even when it's only 3 out of 9 that failed to finish. I mean, yeah, okay. No, it wasn't ideal, and yeah, I'm gutted I was gutted for Felix, who's had a fantastic season so far. That's the first real horrible race he's had, and through no fault of his own. Catherine Legge, who again has had a rough time of it this year's 500 again, but a shout out again to Elf Cosmetics, who have done a wonderful job working with her over the course of this 500. Really, really incredible work and trying to get young girls and young women into motorsport and via a very recognizable makeup brand. Very, very cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're Elf though, like, stick with her and start growing that portfolio of drivers you sponsor here in the States.
Yeah, and Catherine has said she wants to do more races this year. There's a golden opportunity there, as far as I'm concerned. Like, why not? As far as I'm concerned, be a brilliant job. I know the term brand activation makes me throw up in my mouth a little bit, but they did a wonderful job over there during the 500 with that. So shout out to Catherine Legge and to Elf. That was really, really cool to see. Shame the car just wasn't there all week, and then, of course, it dies in the middle of the race itself, because of course it did. It was a gutter in that sense. Like I said, like King said, completely agreed. Ridiculously aggressive the first 100 laps of this were the most aggressive I've ever seen in a race. There's a couple other ones in there. Colton Herta, who was running second at one point, he also curbs his car at the front, spins out, and I don't want to say wreck, because remember when we were watching this game, we were all saying, why is he getting out of his car? Because the car was well enough to make it back to the pits. And they could have picked up a couple of more spots. Ultimately, he was 8-9 laps down. he wouldn't have gained any extra spots because everybody else was only a lap.
He was 8 to 9 laps down. After they tow his car back to pit lane, he gets back in and they send him out. He would have been 1, maybe 2 laps down. That's easily, there were more cautions. He could have made that lap back up, but he, on his own, decided to make the decision to get out of his us when his team didn't want him to.
It's likely the adrenaline in the moment. I mean, us mortals are going to be shitting ourselves if we spun out at 200 miles an hour down the chute and crashed our cars. That's why we're not racing drivers. We're podcasters. I also still think that, like, if he ends up like 1 or 2 laps down, Jacques Villeneuve winning for 2 laps down in 95, that's an outlier, not an expectation.
Hey, you don't have to win the race. Get as many spots as you can.
Long-term championship, you're right, but this is the Indianapolis 500.
Says dude who's been trying to get a super license for years, and they don't give out super license points for this one race.
No, they don't, and it's worth pointing out as well. Colton Herta was looking like a top end title contender going into this race. He's been excellent this season for Andretti. Been in the top 10 every race so far this season.
And you know the crazy thing is, he's still only 39 points back with the rest of the season to go.
I hope he doesn't lose the title by like 2 or 3 points. I really hope he doesn't, because people are going to circle this one and go, maybe you should have stayed in the car, buddy. Because, I mean, the way the rest of the race shook out, only one person lost a lap, and that was Agustin Canapino. But even so, you just don't know what's going to happen at that point in time. Like, it was.
Are we going to gloss over Scott McLaughlin's hellacious restart in the middle of the race, where he's like 2 cars back, and he just sends it in the dirt along the pit wall and makes it stick?
He's a madman. That was the J.R. Hildebrand special, where he just pins it along the pit wall and just prays, and he makes it somehow. McLaughlin's restarts were all mad sicko this year. It showed. I mean, he got the extra 2 points for leading the most. He led 66 laps of this race. His car just wasn't there at the end, but even so, McLaughlin actually looking racy at a 500 for the first time was pretty cool to see.
He put Alexander Rossi, Connor Daly, and Stingray Robb simultaneously in a scorpion deathlock and made them tap.
That's going to be another one for NASCAR, man, to have to update his balmiest 21st century overtakes list again, because we've now got 2 more entries for this year, most likely.
As
I was informed on Twitter during the race, you guys renamed the Best Overtake Award last year, and don't you guys look stupid now?
Look, man, that was a good overtake, but like, it's not Ross Chastain's wall ride. There's levels to this.
Yes, nothing's gonna beat Ross Chastain's wall ride at Martinsville, including Ross Chastain. He will never do anything like that again. Scott,
You literally can't do that anymore. It's crazy. But it didn't then.
But getting down to the business end of things here, we got a clean last 45 laps or so. The last big wreck was Will Power, who somehow Will Power just wasn't here this race. He had a fantastic qualifying car. I wonder if after that qualifying run where he admitted he played it safe, which is kind of amazing on a 233.9 mile an hour run, but here we are. I wonder if they went a bit more aggressive on setup and it didn't work, because he was nowhere in this race. He slid down the order and eventually crashed in another car's aero wash with 55 to go. And that was we were sitting there thinking, hang on, there's just over an hour to go. There's 48 laps left. This is the business end of the race where the aggression gets turned up to 11. Are we actually going to get this race fully completed in?
Yeah, Dre, me and I were going back and forth about this, because I was thinking, like, I have seen races like this just descend into chaos. I'm thinking we're going to have so many cautions that it's not even going to be like a thought that we're not going to get all 200 laps in. Yeah, and to your credit, you were more optimistic.
I was like, okay, it's 42 seconds a lap round here, roughly, with 65 minutes to go. We should be okay as long as there's not like 2 or 3 more cautions. And then I also said to myself, wait a minute, did I just say there won't be 2 or 3 more cautions in the last 50 laps of an Indy 500?
By the
That
way,
might be a really silly statement if it wasn't for the fact there wasn't another caution.
We ran 46 consecutive green flag laps without any nonsense after Will Power's crash. Do you know, after how many Daytona 500s I've watched in recent memory, how refreshing that is? That the race doesn't just descend into total chaos, and especially how refreshing it is after the debacle that was last year.
King, you remember, we were both in that Discord call last year during last year's race. How much were we bricking it over a 1-lap final shootout last year? I was shitting bricks, ironically.
Man. Like... Yes, I was gonna lose. I was losing it, especially considering who was involved in that fight for the win, and that's why I have to give massive props to Pato O'Ward for not doing what he usually does.
Oh yeah.
We'll get. Let's talk about that. This was a crazy end of the race. Like I said, the last 46 laps ran green to the finish. Scott Dixon and Pato O'Ward had made themselves late race contenders by running an overcut strategy, getting back on sequence right at the death, and all of a sudden injecting themselves into what we thought might have been a fight between Josef Newgarden and Alex Rossi for the win. Shades of 2019 when it was Simon Pagenaud trying. That was in a Penske versus McLaren shootout. Only this time Rossi was in an orange car rather than a Napa car in this case. But even so. It boiled down right at the end to the final 2 really in the last 3 laps of the race. It was between Pato O'Ward and Josef Newgarden, and we've seen these two duel it out in oval races. So remember Texas last year and how brilliant a fight that was until the very death. They are. I mean, if you are a regular IndyCar fan, I think I'm fair in saying these are the 2 best oval races in the world, and it came down to those 2 for the win of the 500. You couldn't have asked for a better scenario.
You are right, though you're missing like a little bit of setup here, because first, we got to talk about the fact that for a while, I thought the racing gods were going to give Scott Dixon one of the great breaks as compensation for all the near misses he's had trying to win the second race. Because at about mid-distance, Scott Dixon is mixing it up with Will Power in the middle of the pack. He moves over to his left to try and get around Power, and in doing so, he chops off Ryan Hunter-Reay. They make contact. Hunter-Reay spins out. His race is done. Incredibly, no further action was taken for avoidable contact or blocking. And the way the strategy played out, we were thinking, oh man, Scott Dixon's going to do this again. And I'm just thinking, maybe he is finally about to make a big withdrawal at the Karma Bank at Indianapolis.
As it turns out, we found out via the latest episode of 100 Days to Indy that came out this week, episode 5 of that series, when Dixon went over the pit lane speed limit in 2022, the one that many people, including him, reckons was the one that got away, he was 0.1 mile an hour over.
Oh my God.
That is tough. The other thing,
how close it was. That was how close Dixon was to probably doubling up in 2022 between the 500 and probably the series title, given how close he was to winning that too.
0.1 of a mile an hour. And also, like, Alexander Rossi was looking like Arrow McLaren's top challenger for the win with about 10 to go, but then all of a sudden, something incredible happened. Townsend Bell, who has been getting incredibly lazy lately, made a wonderful observation that Pato O'Ward has more fuel in the tank and his car is quicker. And sure enough, they swap places with about 7 to go. And then I'm thinking, this is now the fight for the win. And I'm thinking, this is Pato O'Ward's moment. So back in 2022, he draws alongside Ericsson going into 1, and then he backs out of it. Pato says he wouldn't have had the horses to make that move stick at the time, but we all just felt like it's the Indy 500. It's the last lap. You either win it or you wear it. The next year, Pato O'Ward overcompensates for that. He goes for a very aggressive move too early in the race, takes himself out. Yep, with 7 to go, he wrecks himself and others. And you're just thinking, man, is he ever going to figure this out? And with a lap to go, I swore he had it. Because he made the move that everybody said he should have made in 2022, and he made it stick. And I'm thinking, right.
He's got it. I remember I was in a Slack chat on my day job with Joey Barnes, who does great work he's IndyCars reporter for motorsport.com. And I said to him, 9 times out of 10, that's the winning move. Around the outside, turn 1, it takes, with all the aero wash that's going to come from turns 1 and 2, it's hard to immediately retaliate with a counter-attack. But Newgarden was just so strong following another car. And we found out from Krista Hardy, he was in our Discord call earlier, shout out to him, like Newgarden's highest trap speed going into turn 3 was on the absolute final lap where he touched 230 miles an hour without the qualifying boost that these cars get in qualifying. So it's about 10 mile an hour less, but even so, to do 230 into turn 3, left it as late as he dared, went around the outside of turn 3 to sweeps over across Pato, gets the full car length in front. The aero wash means Pato can't respond through 4, where he was normally really strong. He was excellent off turn 4 in that final run all the way through, but was just too far back. Josef Newgarden goes back-to-back and wins his second Indianapolis 500. The man had to wait 12 years for his first one, and like London buses, 2 came along at once.
That's got to be in the conversation. Like, we were joking about that. In the context of, like, the entire Indianapolis 500 history, is that one of the greatest overtakes in the history of the event?
Yes, in terms of the fact that there have been 5 last lap passes to win the Indianapolis 500, and Josef Newgarden is in 2 of them, the last 2 Indianapolis 500s. And unlike last year's event, which obviously a bit divisive, a bit controversial with it being a single lap sprint for the win.
A bit they say.
This year had none of that. It was the finish that we all wanted to see.
100%. And I mean, I'd argue, King, it's an even higher degree of difficulty than the one he put on Marcus Ericsson to win in 2023. That was last minute, last chance saloon. He pulls out right at the death of turn 3 and has to sweep all the way across the apex in front of Pato to make that move stick. Side by side through the entry of turn 3. If he gets that wrong, he's in the fence. They might both be in the fence. And like the degree of difficulty on that is off the scale. If the level of confidence on Newgarden to just plant his car there and pray to God he makes the corner, and then he makes it, and it wins him the race because Pato's got no time to counter. Wonderful, wonderful pass. One of the best I've ever seen at the Speedway.
Pulled off a double overtake around the outside of 3 on one of the restarts earlier in the race. I mean, there were some incredible...
On Alex Palou!
Yeah, a double overtake on Alex Palou, and I want to say it was Santino Ferrucci was the other car.
Yeah.
And I watched that back in the highlights package, and I thought, that's interesting. That was something to think about, but talk about some of the other last lap overtakes. Like, there was the famous one in 2011 where Dan Weldon overtook a car that had crashed because J.R. Hildebrand washed out the marbles. Before that, Marco Andretti was leading out of 4. Sam Hornish Jr. and the Slipstream had other ideas. God, that was incredible. That was everything this race should be and then some.
we had to peel you off the ceiling during that Discord call for multiple obvious and understandable reasons. And my brother is also, for the record, my brother is also a huge Josef Newgarden fan. He exploded when that came through, because I didn't think Newgarden was good. I thought Pato would won it with the first pass of that final lap. We had 2 last lap overtakes on that final lap. Well, depends I don't know if it's an overtake. It depends if was Pato in front when he crossed the line. I don't care. I'm counting it. It was a wonderful, wonderful finish. It was everything we could have wanted. And like I said, like you mentioned, RJ, it told the perfect story. Newgarden has been the best oval racer in the world, without any question, for the last year and a half now. He's been racking up oval wins for fun. Short oval, super speedways, 2 500s in between. He's been that dude for 18 months now. The only one that's really ran him close consistently has been Pato O'Ward. He's been like a pest on these ovals to him.
I have the stats to not only back that narrative up, but to kind of illustrate this as us being at just the start of the story, not the end. Because since the 2000 season, there have been 21 oval races. In 15 of those 21 races, Newgarden or O'Ward has finished in the top 2 positions.
That is nuts.
That is 6 of those races. They finished 1-2 either way. However, in those 6 1-2 finishes, O'Ward has only beaten Newgarden 1 time.
It's probably what made it even more of an emotional sting for Pato to lose. I mean, as RJ alluded to, 2022 probably played it too safe. 2023 almost certainly was too aggressive. 2024, we thought he did it right, and it still wasn't enough.
And O'Ward has only finished the 500 during this time period second once. This is the first time that he's finished, second twice. This is the first time he's finished second to Josef.
Yeah. 2022 was the other one when we really lost to Marcus. And you could see after the race, Pato was crushed. I can't remember the last time I've seen. I mean, Alex Rossi was emotional, and he finished 4th in the end, and he was on the brink of tears because of how close he was. Pato I have never seen him so emotionally affected by a defeat. He burst into tears when he parked his car up eventually. He was in tears in his interview with Kevin.
Kevin Lee.
He swore profusely, which I thought was hilarious, but also just so upset about being so close again to one of these. It's the last 3 years, you could argue, he was one of the best dudes here. 2023 was one that I think was the really big one that got away, because he had the freshest tyres of anybody in the field with 7 to go, and the only person in his ballpark was Marcus Ericsson, and he just pulled the trigger too early, in my opinion, and that's what did him in. So to see the conflicting emotions, obviously Newgarden absolutely delighted. He's now over $4 million richer off the back of this win. He jumped into the crowd again for the second consecutive year. And let's not get it twisted. It's been a tough time for Newgarden this year, on and off the track. No matter which way you slice it, even if you give him the benefit of the doubt for St. Petersburg, okay, he was DQ'd, but we all knew he was the best guy on the day, regardless of those restarts and how many times he pushed the button. That doesn't count anymore. And the rest of his season, besides that, has just not been great. A bit unlucky at Long Beach, but Barber and the Indy road course race, nowhere worth a damn. He needed this to save his Astor Cup campaign, and he's gone back-to-back instead. And he was booed on the driver intros going into this race by a significant portion of these fans. Newgarden, the once face of this series, has now become a room splitter. There's no getting around it now.
Because I really, without a doubt, Newgarden's likely one of the best, if not the best driver of just this generation. And Newgarden v. O'Ward is going to be our era's Foyt v. Andretti, where
let me bring up something here as well. This was from Nathan Brown and has since been reposted by IndyCar. The list of American open wheel racing drivers: IndyCar, kart, USAC, AAA, with at least 30 career wins, 2 Indy 500s, and 2 championships. Al Unser Sr., Bobby Unser, Al Unser Jr., AJ Foyt, Dario Franchitti, Josef Newgarden.
There's no getting around it. He is the American open wheel racer of this generation. He's been racking these wins up since the pandemic. He's been chalking these off for fun at this point. The one thing that was missing was a 500. He's now won 2 of them. Yep. This is all-time status now. He's got as many wins as Rick Mears now, which is crazy to me.
Yeah, we said that earlier, and now he does have as many as Rick Mears.
And
who was not on this list?
And this time, he gets to keep it.
You know who else wasn't on that list? Any of the Andrettis, Mario or Michael, Sebastian Bourdais, Scott Dixon, all guys we consider like all-timers, Will Power. The thing is, Josef Newgarden easily has at least another 7 years to keep building this.
He's still in his early 30s.
We're in the ballpark of he's in the discussion of the greatest of all time. If you're leaving him out of it, you're doing the discussion a disservice.
He's a monster.
Yeah, and that's very true. That's very true, and obviously, despite all the on-track accomplishments, a lot of people are not going to change their opinion about what happened at St. Petersburg, especially with Penske and their reputation as the home of the unfair advantage.
I think, and this may be me wearing my fan cap, I think when all is said and done, whether it's push to pass gate, whether it's Nashville 2022 or anything else you want to bring up about Josef Newgarden, that's going to be small potatoes at the end of the entire picture.
Look, you're talking to the world's biggest Sebastian Vettel fan. I know exactly how this feeling is. And the Vettel didn't ever really do anything that was outright cheating on a level like that. And even then, people couldn't stand him for years. I know exactly how this goes. People will come around on Newgarden in the end. And half of the audience already have forgiven him for what happened, because I'm not sure what's weirder. People like Marshall Pruitt were slandering him in a mailbag, or the people that were flocking to defend it on social media. It was all weird to me at this point.
I think in the long run, I don't know. It's just, when he went into that crowd, it still felt as good as the first time. And
absolutely.
I know it's, a lot of people are going to be rushing it. Not every one of the 250,000 to 300,000 people are going to be able to go ahead and high five the winner after he jumps into the crowd. I'm sure there were some people that were wanting to leave early because of it, but to me, it still feels like he has a large enough bastion of supporters that appreciate what he does and what he means to the sport. I think the ship has sailed on making him the face of the sport. IndyCar had a golden opportunity to do that 5 to 7 years ago. They dropped the ball on it. He's now just at the apex of his prime. I don't think you can get that back. You'll just have to be another one of the underappreciated greats of our generation.
I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's more interesting that Josef Newgarden is a more complicated figure because of the cheating scandal.
I think it's fascinating.
Honestly, yeah, it would be kind of boring if he was literally just a white meat baby face.
I mean, on the other hand,
I find him boring. And this is no disrespect. And this is no disrespect to Scott Dixon. He's one of the greatest of all time in any racing discipline I've ever seen. He's an incredible fucking driver.
Dude, we had fans we had friends of ours who were watching this race who were just dreading the possibility of a Scott Dixon second Indy 500.
But the thing is right. The most interesting thing about Scott Dixon is the rest of his family, and then and you know why. But the point I'm getting at here is that. Look, as someone who has always kind of been very quick to point out that Newgarden isn't Peter Perfect out of wacky races, I do find the the complexity of his character interesting. He is no longer this incredible babyface that was doing all the promotional work, not taking himself too seriously, and was trying to become the face of the series, going the extra mile for IndyCar, who didn't deserve it. He's now someone that absolutely has changed his personality and character in the last 12 months in regards to how he's approached the series, whether it be Nashville 2022, whether it be his purge of social media. Something has clearly happened between him and Scott McLaughlin behind the scenes in the last year that we don't fully know or fully understand or know about. Even James Hinchcliffe was hinting at it during the broadcasts. Something happened in that Penske camp last year that we don't know about. I find that fascinating.
Yeah, stuff like that has me locked in. Like, it's sort of, not to compare him to other troubled Americans, but
there's a list.
but you know, that he's willing to go to such far lengths to improve himself as a driver is commendable, no matter how you feel about what he's done to get there, whether it be, you know, people disappointed by the fact that Bus Bros is no longer a thing, but just his dedication to the craft is commendable.
I mentioned that when I wrote about St. Petersburg at the start of this season. I thought, damn, he's purged his whole damn social media. He clearly didn't just let the 500 win from last year go to his head. He was clearly locked in. He was clearly disappointed at the way his overall regular season turned out, given he was down in 5th and was terrible on road and street courses by his standards last year. He threw himself at it in the off-season, won the first race, and I thought Josef was back. And I was like, that's awesome. It's a great story. It's a great narrative to go into 2024 with. And it's not quite worked out that way since then, for obvious and not so obvious reasons.
Those twists and turns are interesting.
King, when I think of like handsome men who are like clearly at the apex of their sport, yet have shades of gray and are divisive with fans. I'm not saying that Josef Newgarden should come out every race preaching hustle, loyalty, and respect. But at the end of the day, I think at the sunset of his career, he's still going to get a big pop out of the audience, just like John Cena does every time he come back, from the same people who are booing him out of the building in the era of Super Cena. But I don't think anybody...
When I said what I said earlier, I wasn't thinking of John Cena. I was thinking about the guy putting on the U.S. Postal Service jersey and giving everyone Livestrong bracelets.
That podcaster?
Yeah.
Man, we don't care about the podcasters. But like,
podcasters.
I want to get to this point that like, after that interview and after the way that race ended, I think there's no getting around the Pato O'Ward is now the fan favorite of the IndyCar series.
Yeah,
100%. And again, he's earned it. He is an incredibly magnetic personality. He's very much a heart on your sleeve kind of person. That always goes over well with that whole true racer embodiment vibe about Pato. He's aggressive. We all like an aggressive driver. I still have my issues with his racecraft. To a degree, because he's still making some of the mistakes that I think plagued his 2023 season, in my opinion. But I completely understand why people love this kid so much. He's an incredibly... it sounds cliche, but it really is like heart on sleeve, aggressive, likable guy. And I like the fact he's honest about the series and some of its shortcomings. I love the fact he goes out of his way to promote IndyCar and does the smart things like buying grandstands and fan club appearances and things like that. It's like he's very clever in how he carries himself. And I'm not saying that what happened after this race was manufactured. That was obviously clearly just genuine heartbreak, and it's easy. It's always going to be.
I think he gained a lot of new fans. I think he gained a lot of people's respect from that. And if you don't know Pato O'Ward's whole story, I'll give you the gist of it. He's in the road to Indy about 2016. He doesn't have the only way he can guarantee a budget for a full race is if he wins every race in the month of May, and he does that, puts on a great title challenge, ultimately comes up second. Not enough to secure scholarship for a full Indy Lights season, only does the first 2 runs. It looks like he's done. He's an IMSA prototype challenge. He is crushing everybody, wins every race but the last one. Gets a second chance with Andretti in 2018. Does about everything except win the Freedom 100. He wins the championship. He gets a deal in place with Harding Racing, which is looking like a brand new, very intriguing team. He finishes ninth for them at the end of 2018, and then they don't have the money to keep him around for 2019. He gets a piecemeal deal with Carlin. They sign him as a Rebel Junior, thinking he's got enough super license where maybe we could put him in the F1. It's a disaster. He doesn't qualify for the 500. Everything goes to shambles, and then he gets a lifeline from Arrow McLaren in a very turbulent time for the team, and he exceeds expectations.
Yeah, and like earlier when I made the comparison of Newgarden and O'Ward to Foyt and Andretti, I definitely had in mind that Pato O'Ward is the modern day Mario Andretti.
Yeah, just super popular, fan favorite racer type. Love that for him, and he's too good not to win one of these at a certain point. It is coming. McLaren's been a strong 500 team for a good 3 or 4 years now. They've been consistently up the front of it. It will happen. I'm almost certain of it. He's too good not to.
I mean, we say that about a lot of drivers, but in my heart of hearts, I feel like it's coming. Same with Alex Below, for that matter.
Before we get into what I like to call the winners and losers section, we do have a little bit of breaking news to address here. It's dropped in the last 20 minutes. Tom Blomqvist has been dropped for the next 2 IndyCar races from Meyershank Racing. He's been dropped from Detroit and Expel at Road America. And Helio Castroneves will step in for the next 2 races in his car.
Man, that's disheartening.
That's a big vote of no confidence in Tom Blomqvist's run.
I don't understand how this has all gone so wrong, because I've seen Tom Blomqvist in a top-tier prototype, and he's been good in single-seaters before in his career. And for whatever reason... He's one of the best sports car drivers on the planet today. He's an incredible sports car driver. For whatever reason, the transition just has not worked. I mean, you were about to talk to him as one of the losers in the winners and losers segment. And now he's getting replaced with Helio Castroneves, and even then, that's surely that frees him up to do the Le Mans 24 hours. No, because his seat at Action Express Racing has been filled by Felipe Dragovich because they were supposed to test Blomqvist.
Yeah, this is saying that it's a vote of no confidence, because as massive as an event that the Indy 500 is, that high reward also comes with high risk. And when you crash out turn 1, regardless of the circumstance, a lot of the blame's going to fall on your shoulders.
Absolutely. Yeah. Pato O'Ward saved it going on the curb at turn 2. Tom Blomqvist was not so lucky saving it on the curb at turn 1 on cold tires. Your first corner in a super speedway race, man.
It's brutal. Like I said, the Blomqvist transition has not worked. No matter which way you slice it, the results just aren't good enough, especially when you brought in Felix Rosenqvist into a brand new team this year, and he's been excellent all season long so far. He's been the best Felix has looked in an IndyCar since he got here, in my opinion. It's only going to add even more pressure to Blomqvist, who's got a glistening reputation outside of IndyCar to perform well straight away, and it's just not worked out. I hope it's just a shot in the arm to bench him for a couple of rounds. It sucks that he's now in a situation where he can't go to Le Mans now as a result of all this, because that's, quite frankly, I said it before, it's probably where he belongs in terms of big one-off races. He's a wonderful sports car driver. I saw him at Daytona. He was absolutely incredible this year. He was, for me, the driver of the race. But you're putting Helio back in there again, who's 50 next year. And, last year he kind of went out sad, really, in terms of how his performances were. And if you think Helio is a better option for you at this point over the next 2 races, then that says a lot to me about what you think of Tom Blomqvist at the moment. And that's sad.
I also might say a lot about the financial situation of things. Because Helio's going to bring a lot more sponsors with him.
Yeah,
just is what it is. Concourse Club Miami stakeholder Helio Castroneves.
I don't think the sponsorship thing is a big factor in this, considering that Helio partly owns the team. It's more. I think it's more of them wanting a more experienced hand to push that entry up the leader circle standings.
Yeah, that's going to be important too. And particularly if we get into an era of like charters with guaranteed entries for every race but the 500.
Yeah, again, they said that they wanted to do a deal, make some form of announcement before the 500. Didn't happen. But to parallel NASCAR's charter system, when NASCAR introduced a charter system, they gave out the charters free to everyone who finished in the top 36 in owners points. So essentially, should IndyCar implement it the same way, if you finish in the leader circle, you would effectively get a charter for free. Again, maybe Roger's going to be Roger and ask all the team owners to buy the charter the first time out, but we got to see how this plays out.
We'll have to see.
Indeed.
Yeah. Dre, who are some of your big winners of the race? Let's stop being sad for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I know that this is not a award based on raw performance. I know it's very much a media kiss up award. I'm not ignorant or to that, but don't get me wrong, Kyle Larson had a very, very solid first run in this race, was great for the show, was running top six.
No, I gotta say this. Like, yes, I know he wasn't the highest finishing driver, but as a rookie, Kyle Larson made the Fast Six in qualifying. It feels like we all forgot this.
Yeah. I feel I'm only mentioning this because I feel like the person I'm going to mention here was on a run that would have put him in the Fast 12 at least if it wasn't for the fact that he had a plenum event. Christian Rasmussen, I thought, was incredible in this race. Really, really good performance from him. Was in the top 10 for a significant amount of laps. ECR, not quite as strong as they normally are at the 500 this year, in my opinion, overall.
Yeah.
Not quite, because they've had cars that can genuinely challenge for wins in recent years. I don't think they were quite on that level this year. But Christian Rasmussen being, top 10, carrying over how strong he was as an oval driver in Indy next, and they were very limited in oval opportunities there. But last year, he won both oval races they had on the calendar in 2023. Off the back of how great he was at Daytona as well in the LMP2 category. I'm glad Rasmussen had a chance to shine over this fortnight. Really, really strong performance from him. I just hope he can get something full-time because I still don't like the fact he's splitting that ride with Ed. I don't think that's good for anybody at this point, really. But
I think Carpenter's going to get to a point where he knows that, Rasmussen's my guy of the future. If we can get a sponsorship, we don't have to do this ride split anymore because he could be the guy to build around. Then again, we've been saying this about Rinus VeeKay. It's all about how far can ECR take these drivers. Well, at least this month of May, at least in the 500, Christian Rasmussen acquitted himself very, very well.
Indeed.
Did we mention that, despite the fact that Callum Ilott had his weight jacker broken and despite the fact that he got broadsided 1 quarter into the race as he
by your
rejoined
man's
it.
Carl Kirkwood King.
No, this was the Fittipaldi thing, and then he got turned around by Kyle Kirkwood in the pits. Callum Ilott still salvaged 11th place, which, that's like a mile off of O'Ward and Rossi, but given the circumstances, that's not bad.
Not bad at all. Not bad, given he had a absolutely chaotic fucking race. I think he'll take 11th. That's his best finish at the 500. And there's a joke there about him finishing in front of both June Coast cars. Just throwing that out there, just because.
McLaren, you owe it to yourself to expand to a 4th car and bring this guy in the fold if he wants it.
Why not?
I believe it when I see it. Zach's been
because it is McLaren after all. We forget about this.
Shit.
They've been promising a 4th car for a very long time.
Maybe 25, King. Maybe 25.
Maybe this is the year we get it right. Connor Daly, just rose from the ashes when it looked like his career was dead. He puts together another really good Indy 500. Not good enough to win it, but enough to lead significant laps and make you think he could be the one to bring the Borg Warner Trophy home.
He might be the number one part-timer for hire you bring in for the 500 now going forward? Because he's done this a couple of times now, where he's just come in just for a 500 with a team, and he's had a really solid drive. And his car was peppered with little problems over the course of the fortnight. Like, brakes weren't working at one point, weight jacker wasn't working at one point, he had to have his engine looked over as well at one point. He was in the plenum event club at a certain point. Yeah, exactly. Doesn't know what hit him, etc. But 10th place, top 10 again. I mean, it's not his first top 10 at the 500, but he was the biggest mover of the day, up 19 spots from where he qualified. Really, really good result. I mean, he's pretty much made Drainer Reinebold their money back on the entry, which is about as much as you can hope for for an entry for a part-timer like that.
Absolutely. And, I want to give Drainer Reinebold Racing a shout-out just individually as a team, because they prepared some very good cars for what was their only race. Ryan Hunter-Reay was very, very unlucky, but he made the Fast 12. Connor Daly went from the second to last row into the top 10. Drainer Reinebold Racing do very, very well for what little races they can prepare for and what little resources they have at a given time. And you just got to think, if somebody were to ever make a huge, sizable investment that they could run a full season, maybe they could do well. The problem is everybody wants to get an IndyCar at this point. Although, if you're Prima and you want to find somebody to align with, if you're a first-year IndyCar team,
I think there's better experienced dudes in the IndyCar field than him, but I've heard worse options.
Oh, no. I'm just thinking of Prima maybe aligning themselves with DRR in some capacity.
Sure.
When they get the team going.
I think less that, more of, with this talk of there being a charter system, I really wish that should there be a charter system that, Penske Entertainment lend a helping hand out to whichever team has the highest finishing one-off entry.
Sure.
Instead of it being the road to Indy, make it the road to IndyCar. Because, yes, it's great to see the next champion and a couple one-off entries for just this one race, but help people try to become more of a year-round participant in IndyCar.
Absolutely. Christian Rasmussen is a very talented kid. He shouldn't be doing a part-time schedule. This is why people are complaining that F2 is overtaking the road to Indy as an overall talent projection or path and whatnot. So, anything that can throw a bone to incentivize those smaller teams to help facilitate guys coming up that ladder, I'd be all for. 100%. Great drive from Connor Daly. Great job from the Drainer Reinebold team in general. Alex Palou is still really goddamn good at this.
Man, it looked like he might have a chance to win it, but then at a certain point, he's just like, you know what? I think today I want to take the points at the Indianapolis 500.
He has not finished out of the top 5 this season. Now, I make this joke before, but remember last year where his title campaign really took off right around this kind of time?
Mm-hmm.
He is still 9 points better off this year than he was this time last year after 5 races.
And we are going to Detroit Renaissance Center next.
Where he won last year.
Where the streak began, when the summer of Palou truly began.
I was going to say, the next 3 rounds on this calendar are Detroit, Road America, which he also won last year, and Laguna Seca, where in 2022 won by half a minute.
May God have mercy on everybody's soul for Alex Palou.
Just throwing that out there. That was the safest top 5 at the Indy 500 you will ever see in your life. And fun fact, that is Alex Palou's 20th top 5 finish in his last 25 starts.
Man. I mean...
Dude, it's crazy to think that he was a safe top 5 finisher considering, man, Honda. What happened?
Yeah, Dixon and Palou had to be out there carrying the brand like they're Marc Marquez. This is rough.
Now, King, I've met HRC US's head, David Salters. Lovely guy. He seems like a guy who's very much committed to every project he tackles. He's a no-nonsense kind of head of a motorsports department. But I was jokingly thinking when Rosenquist engine let go in particular, I'm thinking, is he thinking, how long will it take for us to draft up a Honda Accord Cup Series car, take our ball and go there and forget all of this shit?
Because, like, especially this year with Chevy and their Platinum events in practice, both Chevrolet and Honda know that this engine is at the end of its development curve. They want a new challenge. They don't want to just be, engine suppliers and maintainers. They want to compete against each other. And right now they don't really have that opportunity to do so. Like, even with this hybrid unit coming in for Mid-Ohio, it's a spec unit. There's there's some parts of it that they could eke out some performance, but it's not the same as developing a new engine whole cloth.
And you got to remember as well, they came together to collab to help put this unit together in the first place because it was so far behind schedule. To even get to this point. So, it's not really competition in a sense. It's just trying to get the whole series over the line. These engines are, 10, 11, 12 years old now? This car and chassis in general is about 10, 11, 12 years old now.
Yeah.
We've mentioned it before on the show. What incentive would there be for a new engine supplier to come into this series right now? There isn't one.
Yeah, because if you enter now as a new supplier, you're a decade behind.
No chance. No, you haven't got a prayer competing against those two.
That's why they got to figure out something. I like the proposal of the spec internal combustion engine, and then the manufacturers can have free reign over all the other components or such.
And the Andretti alternative, where they go to a DPI light format where it is modified stock engines.
And that's going to come online with the new chassis. And this race was proof that the package is still good.
Great.
And I'm willing to live in the moment. It was a cool race. We had more lead changes than we've had in any Indianapolis 500 ever. It was a great race.
Yeah.
Obviously, long term, we've needed to start thinking about what's next. We've been thinking about what's next. It's all a matter about executing. But today I just want to live in the moment because, damn, that was a really good race. Shit.
An incredible race.
That race shows why people care about IndyCar this much.
Yeah, I've said it in my written post, and I'll say it here. There is nothing in motorsport like a great finish to this Indy 500 race. This was a wonderful finish. This is exactly why people love this race, love this tradition so much. It's all worth it in the end when you get finishes like that. Spoiler alert, when I wrote my review for this race, it was the first 10 out of 10 I've given out so far this year. I don't give them out very easily. The last time I did was, ironically, another IndyCar race. It was Texas last year. Another incredible race. At the apex of IndyCar, it doesn't get much better in motorsport across the board than what top-tier IndyCar racing can give you. And that is why people are so emotionally invested, maybe too much, in some cases, towards this series.
I think people are invested too much into this race specifically and not into the series as a whole.
Did you know they're racing in Detroit this weekend? Did anybody mention that yet? I don't think it was mentioned once in the broadcast, which over 5.3 million people watched. They peaked at over 6 for this race. I don't think they mentioned once, hell, by the way, we're racing again in Detroit next week. Stick around, same time, same back channel, next week, and just say, hey, we're racing on a proper track next week. One that was actually really entertaining last year. Detroit was a good race last year.
This is crazy because I think a lot of people shit all over the new layout, but we'll be watching Detroit.
I think people are just mad about how it looks, which honestly, if that's your biggest complaint about a a racetrack is that it looks boxy,
yeah.
Okay.
This is Indianapolis Motor Speedway. What is it but just a big box?
Exactly. A big box that can hold a lot of shit. But a wonderful spectacle and a wonderful race nonetheless. And yeah, congratulations once again to Josef Newgarden for his second Indy 500 title, one of the very best this sport has seen, and he cemented that with one of the greatest final lap passes you will ever see in any series ever. That'll be replayed for years and years to come. As mentioned and joked about, yes, IndyCar is racing again this weekend at Detroit. We'll be back for that next week. Stick around as well on Motorsport 101. We'll also be talking about MotoGP's Catalan Grand Prix. Hey, Francesco Bagnaia, he remembered he was him right at the end. That's kind of important in the grand scheme of things, as the title battle takes another twist over a Catalonia there. It's weird talking about a Catalan race in May and it's not Formula One rather than MotoGP because it's normally in September. Really weird that. But yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit later on this week. Do check that out if you haven't already. As mentioned before, you can follow us on social media at Dre Harrison 101, at RJ O'Connell, and at RyanErikKing.
That's with 2Ks.
That's with 2Ks, of course. And of course, thank you very much for listening. We'll see you later in the week to talk about MotoGP in Catalonia. Until next time, sayonara. Take care.
Later, y'all.
Bye.
Is this the moment when the pain ends? No. This is the moment when your pain begins.
Oh my God.
If you Pato Award, maybe.
Yeah.
Jesus.